Welcome back, explorers. Today we're going to do things a little different. Today, before we discuss what we have been talking about and what we are going to talk about, we're going to do our vocabulary first, okay? So let's look at our vocabulary today. Again, you don't have the slides, so you're just going to have to listen to me, okay? Emperor, the ruler of a vast area of land or empire. The emperor took a long journey to see all of his land and people. And normally when you have an emperor is usually a male. An empress is a girl. All right, intelligent, very smart, quick to learn and understand. Her father was very intelligent and could answer any question she had. Loyal, faithful to an idea, person, place, or thing. The king had many loyal subjects. Mouth, stream or the part of a stream or river that empties into a large body of water. They entered the ocean from the mouth of the river. Okay, so we're not talking about our mouths today. We're talking about a river and where it opens up to the ocean, okay? So let's discuss what we have been talking about, but I want to show you our map while we talk about it, okay? So in today's read aloud, the United States of America, which right now, this is not the United States of America, because remember, we're way back in the frontier time. So right now, what you see in orange is the United States of America. Like I told you, it's not very big. Remember, we started out just on this area because of the Appalachian Mountains. Then Daniel Boone trailblazed a path for everybody, the Wilderness Road, across, and now they've discovered parts of land that are out west. So all this area in orange is the United States. So it's grown way more than what it had been. Pioneer families had crossed the Appalachian Mountains. They settled in lands on the other side. They pushed the borders further into the west of the United States. So it's further and further. They also forced the Native Americans who lived in the areas first, also further and further west. Okay, so they're pushing the Native Americans out of their homes. So now let's look at this green area right here. See this green area? Okay, so I want you to look way down here. See it in this green, it says New Orleans. Now, back then, New Orleans was not part of the United States. See this Mississippi River? The Mississippi River was not part of the United States, okay? It had been discovered by a different country. Now, North America had been explored and settled by people from European countries, but not just Europe. It was other places like France. Okay, so the country of France had explored this area. Now, the settlers are wanting to go into these areas. So let's see. We're going to find out about our third president today. Okay, it's Thomas Jefferson. And he wanted to buy the city of New Orleans from France. And we're going to find out why Thomas Jefferson, our third president, wanted to buy the city of New Orleans. Because like right now, see, the French own New Orleans and the Mississippi River and all this in green. The United States is in orange, but our president, Thomas Jefferson, wants to buy New Orleans, and we're going to find out why. Okay, are you ready? All right, here we go. Entering his office in Washington, oops, I forgot to, there we go. Entering his office in Washington, D.C., Thomas Jefferson, President of the United States, was pleased, or he was happy, glad, to find his friend James Monroe waiting for him. Monroe politely rose to his feet, but President Jefferson said, "Sit down, James. This is not a formal meeting, as you can see." In fact, Thomas Jefferson was dressed in his robe and slippers. What? If he's in his robe and slippers, what do you think? You think he's ready for bed? Probably. As the two men sat down, James Monroe thought to himself, Thomas Jefferson doesn't try to make himself look fancy or important, but he's the smartest, most interesting person I have ever known. How lucky am I to be his friend? At the same time, President Jefferson was thinking, James Monroe is honest and intelligent, or smart. and he's willing to work hard and do a good job. Okay, so Mr. Monroe and President Jefferson are describing characteristics. Do you think Monroe and Jefferson sound like they would be good people to lead? Yeah, because Mr. Monroe said that President Jefferson was the smartest, most interesting person he's ever met. And President Jefferson was talking about James or Mr. Monroe and said he was honest and intelligent. So that sounds like good characteristics for somebody who would be a leader. Speaking out loud now, the president said, James, I have an important job I want you to do, one that I think you are especially well suited to carry out. I want you to buy a city for us. Have you ever heard of anybody buying a city? You know anybody that's bought a city? I don't. I beg your pardon? James Monroe exclaimed in surprise. Buy a city? Yes, I want to send you to France to see the Emperor Napoleon, who rules France and half of Europe as well. So remember, emperor's like a king. When you reach France, I want you to buy the city of New Orleans from Napoleon. Oh boy, you think that's going to go over well? I don't know. James Monroe knew the city of New Orleans sat near the mouth of the Mississippi River. Remember, we talked about the mouth of the river is where the river opens up to the ocean. So here's the mouth of the river where it comes into the ocean. French settlers started settling in New Orleans many years ago because they knew that ships and boats could travel up and down the Mississippi River, allowing people to buy and sell with one another all along the length of the Mississippi River. So using the Mississippi River was a lot easier than walking or taking a wagon or using a horse. It was faster. James Monroe knew that France still owned New Orleans, plus a great deal of land west of the Mississippi River, stretching all the way to the Rocky Mountains. Now, here's the Appalachian Mountains, but here's the Rocky Mountains. So the French owned all of this area in green. Jefferson stopped and stared into the flames of the fire by which they sat, for it was a chilly morning. Then he continued, as you know, James, our nation, the United States, is on the eastern side of the Mississippi, while the area that France has claimed is on the western side. So here's the United States. It's on the east side of the Mississippi, all this. And then this is France, and they're on the west side. So here's the Mississippi River. And Tennessee is actually, west coast border is on the Mississippi River. More and more Americans are moving near the Mississippi and building towns and cities along the river. We must make sure Americans can do business up and down the river if we are going to build up that part of the United States. Right now, France and the United States are friends, and Napoleon lets American ships pass by New Orleans away from the ocean up and down the river. But if Napoleon ever grew angry with us, so right now, the Americans or the United States people are allowed to go up and down the Mississippi River. But why do you think President Jefferson was worried if Napoleon got angry with them? Then he wouldn't let us use the river anymore, would he? Then we'd have no way to get there. I understand, said James Monroe. Napoleon could stop our ships and boats from bringing us the things we need. He could stop our farmers in that part of the country from sending food they grow to the rest of us back east. Stop people in the east from shipping farm tools to the farmers. I understand why New Orleans is important, but why would Napoleon want to sell the city? All right, how would you describe this man? He looks very serious. He looks like a soldier. Do you think he might be nice? I don't know. Let's see. Jefferson answered, Napoleon needs as much money as he can get his hands on so that he can pay for supplies, uniforms, food, and ships for his soldiers, and sailors because France is fighting in a war in Europe. We will offer to pay him the money he wants, which will make him happy, and we will get control of the river, which will make us happy. Napoleon certainly seemed to have a reason to sell New Orleans to us, said Monroe. All right, this the Emperor of France, Napoleon Bonaparte. Jefferson replied, "He may have a reason, but we must get Napoleon to agree to the sale. He can be very difficult to work with, James. He thinks he is the most important person alive. If he believes you think so too, he can be a loyal, powerful friend." Remember, loyal friends are who stick by your side no matter what. On the other hand, if he thinks you do not see him as important or do not agree with his ideas, he will have his servants throw you out of his palace and slam the door. James, you are so likable, he'll want to work with you. If you succeed, you will help us to open up the whole western part of our country, that's the Mississippi River. Will you try? So that means if we can get access to New Orleans and we can have parts of the Mississippi, then we can move further even west and discover things even further out west. James Monroe stood up. "It will be my honor to do so," he said. Thomas Jefferson arose and the two friends shook hands. As he turned to go, James Monroe thought, "When I came here this morning, I had no idea I would be going to France for the President of the United States. And just think, I'm going there to buy a city." I think that would be crazy if I were to go buy a city. All right, I'm going to stop share. And let's talk about what we've learned today. That's a lot of information we've learned today. So, who was the President of the United States during this? Not today, not for us, but back then. Thomas Jefferson. So, the President of the United States back then was Thomas Jefferson. He was our third president. Who was James Monroe? James Monroe was Thomas Jefferson's friend. Okay, so during this read aloud, this time frame, how did people use the Mississippi River? They traveled by ships and boats up and down, carrying people and supplies. Why did people use the river? Because it was easier than walking or riding a horse, wasn't it? Faster too. Who was Napoleon? He was the emperor or leader of France. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson was worried about what might happen if Napoleon suddenly wouldn't let Americans pass through New Orleans. Why was Thomas Jefferson worried? Because if he got mad at them, then he wouldn't let us use that area anymore. He wouldn't let us use the Mississippi River. Would Americans be able to go down the Mississippi River to and from the ocean? No, not at all. Because Napoleon might be mad at us. We wanted to buy it. So why did Thomas Jefferson want to buy New Orleans? He wanted to make sure Americans would always be able to go through New Orleans on their way to and from the Mississippi River and the ocean. All right, friends, I want you to go into Google Classroom and answer all of the lovely questions I have for you there. Remember, I want you to do what you know from what we've learned today. Rewatch the video, go back and look at our questions on there. Don't Google them. Don't say I don't know. Okay? Don't forget to turn it in. I'll see you guys later. Bye, friends.